This episode is brought to you by RedPillThreads.com. They are a new brand geared toward fueling the anti-woke movement. They have some hilarious and edgy designs, which I cannot show you on YouTube because I will get my channel demonetized. So you're going to have to check out RedPillThreads.com for yourself. These hoodies, they are some of the warmest and softest I have ever worn, and the shirts, they fit great and are super comfortable. So if you want to take a stand against cancel culture and donate to some amazing nonprofits, this is the company for you. 20% of Red Pill Threads proceeds go towards rotating charities aimed at combating child trafficking and helping people who have been injured by the pharmaceutical industry. So stop supporting large corporations and start wearing clothes from a small business with a big message. Check out redpillthreads.com today.
For me, I know that there are bad actors in the world right now that are practicing delivering toxins through drone technology.
Yeah.
And they learned from COVID because they saw what COVID did to this country.
We're live. We're not live, but we're here in Austin, Texas, episode 179, Convos in the Pedicab. I'm with my my friend and CIA handler, Eric Burkhart. Excited. You're a former CIA officer. We had an episode a little over a year ago where it was pre-October 7th. We were talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Went back and forth on a multitude of issues. I think this time around we're kind of going to probably be a little bit more on the same page with a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And the country has changed tremendously as since we did our last episode, and I kind of want to talk through what to expect this next coming year, this Trump's administration, and also just talk about what's been happening as of late with the drones, the terrorist attacks, the H-1B visas, the online landscape, and just everything that's been going on. And I just really want to hear your views on all of this. So we had 2 terrorist attacks happen on New Year's Day. I want to know what your thoughts about all that are.
Well, one, the Las Vegas incident, I don't know if you can actually characterize that as a terrorist attack.
Okay.
That was a kind of a very personal situation involving someone who had a lot of instability, emotional and otherwise, heavily medicated, PTSD, had just been left by his wife, a bit of an unreliable guy, serial cheater, and even though he had a sterling record in the military and he was still active duty, he was trying to make a statement. I just don't know necessarily that I would classify it as terrorist because he made the decision that he was going to be the only victim.
And he did. Didn't he have like an AK-47 that he shot himself in the head with? Like, the narrative behind that story seems a little odd.
He shot himself with a pistol.
Oh, okay.
And he had a long arm in the car with him, but it looked like an AR platform to me from the video that I saw. Maybe it was an AK, but it looked more like an AR platform, either a 10 or a 15, but it was burned so badly. But the reality is, whatever statement he was making, I'm not real clear on why he chose the electric vehicle, but he did. And he just seemed to be, he was real deep in the conspiracy stuff. People have to understand.
But what conspiracies was he balls deep in?
Well, he had decided that the Chinese are flying armies of drones all over the country, collecting all sorts of information and trying to set up a system to destabilize our country by the use of drones.
That doesn't sound on the surface with where we are that far-fetched.
Well, it's only far-fetched if you understand the issue of drones and drone technology. And the Chinese are far behind us with regards to drone technology. And without getting into the weeds about drones, drones have to have a handler, and you also have to have a base. You have to have you're limited on distance. You're limited on a number of different things, and I have not yet bought into the idea that the country is being inundated with Chinese drones all over the place. I mean, certainly there are drones all over the place. I have a drone. I have a nice drone.
A lot of people have drones.
Yeah, and
I also just don't understand, not to interrupt, how that would cause somebody to shoot themselves in the head with a pistol while they had a long rifle in their vehicle, and you die because the vehicle blew itself up.
Well, he blew the vehicle up himself. He set a timer, shot himself. He started the timer before he shot himself, and 5 seconds after he shot himself, the explosion happened. He had timed it that way.
Oh.
And that's my supposition. I'm not part of that investigation. That's how I see it at this stage. But the guy, he was very well spoken. But if you read his writings, he really went down the conspiracy highway regarding the drone issue and was saying that the government wasn't paying enough attention to it, and certainly the New Jersey situation played into that.
Oh, Luigi? Oh, no, okay, not the different situation. Okay.
And he, again, was heavily medicated and was also smoking pot, PTSD, heavily medicated, schizophrenic, possibly, certainly paranoid, and it just steamrolled on him. And also, he had nothing really. There was a message in there to his wife, his family. I'm not saying it was a written message, but there was an unsaid message for them. I think that's going to come out to just be a personal tragedy more than anything else.
Do you know if he was in any kind of chat rooms or any kind of group chats where he was communicating with certain people on like Telegram or Signal or anything like that?
Well, federal law enforcement is keeping a real tight.
See on that?
Yes, but so far I haven't heard any of that. Just what's been released publicly. The New Orleans situation is different, and by the way, they're not connected. It was coincidence.
Yeah, I don't know. So I want to elaborate on that, but I want to go back to the Cybertruck guy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also getting a little tinfoil hatty, but you're saying that he was deep in the rabbit hole, very conspiratorial, had a clear set of mental issues, right? And it seems as though there's a reoccurring pattern of people who commit mass shootings, terrorist attacks, all types of things that have a lot of these same mental issues. And a lot of these people also go into, are deep into like 4chan, deep into these Reddit chats, deep into these Telegram messages. And there is a theory and a speculation that maybe some nefarious actors try to prey on certain people to get them to commit random acts of terrorism, as a way to and then the result of the terrorist attack is, oh, now we need more digital ID, now we need more KYC verification, now we need more red flag laws. I'm just spitballing things out there. Now we need to censor the internet more, et cetera, et cetera. And so maybe, and this is a little bit out there, but maybe he kind of knew that he was being goaded or programmed into committing a massive attack on somebody, and he just said, okay, let me just go kill myself and blow this truck up instead of going into this building with my long rifle that was already in my car to begin with.
There's absolutely no indication that anybody else was involved but him.
There's no indication because a lot of stuff is redacted and not being revealed.
See,
I'm just stating that out as a possibility within a multitude of possibilities of that possibly being a thing.
Someone could run out in front of us right now in this pedicab, and we could hit them, and people can extrapolate that into a conspiracy.
Alex Stranger was going too deep in the rabbit hole, and so they had to get him. Yeah.
You've got to be reasonable and accept these things that they happen in our society, and this, all the indications are there that this man was very disturbed,
sure,
and suffering from severe paranoia. Not just personal, because of course he said he was being tracked by the government, which is another absurd. If the government's tracking you, then why are they going to let you do what you did? Drive up to a hotel, drive around Las Vegas all day with a car full of explosives, and not stop you.
Well, if you had some very bad actors who wanted to enhance KYC verification laws, regulate speech on the internet, and push us towards a digital prison through through manufactured consent and this was an evil entity, then yes, that would actually make sense if that were to be the case.
This is a situation where people should be focused on other things that are legitimate and more pressing than this.
Sure, look, like I said, I'm just throwing out reasons as to why that could potentially be the case.
This is going to fade away, and it should fade away. It's a tragedy of a man who made a decision to kill just himself, never intended to kill anybody else. There's no indication he was being prodded, no indication there was anybody else involved, and he could have really made a real tragedy out of this for other people.
And he didn't.
And he chose not to. He had enough in that vehicle to blow out the whole front of that building.
And he didn't.
No,
which
he parked in a particular place to cause the least amount of damage and to hurt the fewest number of people.
And he did it right outside the Trump Tower also.
Yeah. Now that at first had me thinking that he might have been a progressive loony.
Yeah.
That was trying to make a point about electric vehicles and Elon Musk and Trump all at the same time. But I'm seeing all the hallmarks of someone who made a decision based on their life spiraling out of control, their mental instability, their difficult home life, the fact that his wife had just left him, and he'd been busted for years of serial infidelity, and
snapped.
That was the way for him to send this message of, this is what you've driven me to, the military for not paying attention to the drone issue, my wife for backing out of our marriage. Now you don't have me to kick around anymore.
Sure. It's also just total unrelated. It's also pretty good for Tesla stock in the long term because nothing really happened to the surrounding vehicles after an explosion in the Cybertruck.
That's right. And you notice that Elon Musk pointed that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. So buy some, maybe when Tesla dips to 350, not financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor, I drive a tricycle for a living, maybe consider getting some exposure to Tesla.
Yeah. Well, maybe he would. Well, no, I don't want to. I'm not going to. I don't want to drag him into this. But it was just a real tragedy. I've kind of put it off on the back burner. I understand why people are concerned about the fact that he was a drone operator and that he was familiar with drones and the technology behind them. And people are going to be concerned about that right on the piggybacking off of the issues in the Northeast, not just in New Jersey, but in New York and in Washington and Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Of course, they even
It is also a little convenient that these drone sightings seem to have subsided considerably once the omnibus bill got cut by 90%. Just spitballing a little.
Well, when the drone issue first came out, I spent a lot of time examining footage because I was trying to determine what people were filming that were actually drones and what people were filming that were other objects in the sky.
Yes.
And a drone signature is pretty clear. They have to have navigation lights. The difference between a military-style drone and a personal drone, and then there's ultralights and regular traffic. I wanted to understand what was going on, because if someone wants to do surveillance by drones in the United States for nefarious purposes, what are they going to be filming over New Jersey? Mafia wives and stinky armpits? I mean, come on. Well, there's your sniffer drones right there.
It seems a little bit absurd. But you know what? In a place there is something that would make sense about this, and it's that because it would just be like drones flying over Kansas or like Montana or something like that where not too much is going on, and then everybody just hyper focuses on the drones. Whereas if stuff like this was flying over Austin, Texas, there's so much shit going on in Austin that it might be a little bit more of an afterthought because it'd be like, oh yeah, there's drones in the sky, but I gotta get to work, or I gotta make my new startup, or look at the crackhead who just took a shit on the floor, right, on the sidewalk on 5th and Congress, which is kind of where we're at almost. So there could be an actual reason as to why the drones and UAPs or whatever it is are happen to be flying in those types of areas. So that could be another reason why that's happening, right?
Well, if you want to test your drone capabilities, you're not going to choose a place where they're going to stick out. And that's what they did. They stuck out, and then it turned into a copycat situation where everybody and their mother had to get their drone up in the air to be part of the hysteria.
And then it looked like way bigger than it was because it was just other idiots flying drones. And then people were just shooting random drones in the street. And then other possibilities, now they're going to just try to make it illegal to fly drones around.
Yes, well, and then people are saying, why didn't they shoot them down? Well, first of all, it's illegal. You can't the government just can't arbitrarily shoot down a drone unless they can.
And you don't even know what's in the drone. What if toxic toxic chemicals are in a drone? And you shot down a drone with toxic chemicals and it gets released into the atmosphere, or some kind of bioweapon or a virus or God knows what is in one of these things, and then you just shoot it down, and then all of a sudden now these virus particles are circulating everywhere.
Alex, did you see the video from Florida of that Christmas drone celebration when they made a Christmas tree and some of the drones crashed and hit some kid and injured him? They had 500 drones up at one time in a very limited area, and they were all being piloted, and they were making designs. They made a Christmas tree. The Chinese can make drones. They can fly 500 drones and turn it into a dragon.
Yeah.
So the idea that having a lot of drones up at one time automatically points to something nefarious is not really accurate. Now, then it turned into, I heard a podcaster, of course, the Iranians, there's a drone mothership that went through the Suez Canal last week, and it's off the shores of New Jersey, and it's an Iranian drone. Did you not hear about that?
I heard all these bullshit stories, but I think all of it is nonsense. And to be honest, when I heard the drone stories, I just felt like it was just another, it was like a look over here, kind of a distraction, like a diversion tactic. And also, maybe these drones are trying to get everybody freaked out over an alien invasion, just like people were getting freaked out over COVID or freaked out over God knows what else. And it's just another way to kind of freak the public out to get more tighter governmental controls over things.
On the other side of it, though, there are concerns about drones.
Sure.
And there are legitimate concerns about drones.
What are some of those concerns?
Invasion of privacy.
Well, yeah.
Business issues. People flying drones over ranch land to monitor how their competition livestock is doing what they do, how many Herefords they have, where they're keeping them, where their fences are set up, whether or not you can steal their cows at night by breaking through a fence.
Also, politically, it's a problem too. If I'm running for office, maybe somebody could be flying drones by my house or something. My opponent could theoretically try to get a drone to fly over my house without, totally in secret. There's a lot of there's huge privacy implications and concerns when it comes to drones.
Well, there are rules. There are laws pertaining to private property and flying drones over people's houses, which are ignored all the time.
All the time, yeah.
During Christmas, and one night, I counted 4 drones over my house, and I live out in the country like you do. And I identified them. I saw what they were. And then I flew my drone at night because of all the Christmas lights. I wanted to get a nighttime view of the Christmas lights. And I wonder how many people are thinking, well, we know that CIA guy lives there. He's flying that drone over my house because he's spying on me and my family because,
Oh, I bet. The conspiracies are wild, yeah.
But there's not a lot of control regarding the drone issue. Not only can you buy what is basically a military-style drone on the internet, minus the weapons platform, but you can make your own drone. There are kits that you can modify.
Oh, wow.
And there are some drones that have a much longer lifespan battery-wise. And there are drones that have a much longer distance, the ability to fly further and higher, depending on the size of the drone, how much money you want to spend. There's not a lot of control over the issue, and you could look at the possibility if we had bad actors. Say, for instance, we did have someone like this guy in New Orleans the damage he could do over a party in a downtown city, an open dance, a concert that's out in the open, what you can do with a drone over that, if you put a weapons platform on it, that is something to be concerned about. Also, releasing a biological agent from a drone.
Yeah. Do you see? Are you concerned about stuff like that happening in the next few months, few years?
I am. It's my number one issue of concern for national security in our country, and it is the delivery by drone of a pathogen, of a weaponized pathogen of a virus. Something like, you and I talked about this the last time we spoke, Ebola, Marburg virus, Lassa virus, these hemorrhagic fevers that have a high contagion rate, and the bad guys are right now practicing with drones in different parts of the world where people aren't paying attention. Why someone would want to do testing over the United States when you can do it in Africa and nobody's going to give a shit? You can fly it over a refugee camp and infect 500 people with virus and then watch the contagion and test your delivery method, and everybody's going to assume it's Africa, it's a hemorrhagic fever, it had natural origin. Why anybody would want to test a drone for nefarious purposes over the United States, unless it's just scouting.
No.
Then also drones can be used as a conduit for communication.
Maybe if you don't want, or maybe if you're very, 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 very well entrenched with the pharmaceutical industry, and you don't want RFK Jr. in charge of HHS or Jay Bhattacharya in charge of NIH, releasing a bioweapon conveniently right after or right before or during Trump's confirmation hearings or a little bit afterwards. It's a great way to discredit those people spearheading those agencies, so you can get back to business as usual and get more mandates and get more get more control that the pharmaceutical industry is wielding over people.
Well, that's all a real concern. I kind of like to hope that the left isn't that technologically thrifty.
I don't think it's left or right, though. I just think that this is just a big corporate, lack of a better word, globalist entity that is using tragedy after tragedy and crisis after crisis to just exude as much control as they can over the American public. And viruses and terrorist attacks are how you do it from both the left and the right, to get people to voluntarily give their rights up. And when you have, terrorist attacks occurring on a constant basis, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder to confirm Kash Patel in charge of the FBI. Maybe it's going to be a little harder to confirm Tulsi Gabbard in charge of the DNI. Maybe it's harder to have RFK Jr. and Jay Bhattacharya kind of regulating our public health agencies because they have gotten clearly out of control. So I just think that there actually is a clear motive for why something like that might be happening right now at this time period.
I think those actors that are not necessarily political want to wait and see after confirmation that these people don't end up being disastrous, because then they won't have to go through all that. If these people end up not being qualified, end up causing a lot of problems, I think they would wait to see how they do in their job before they would start trying to discredit them.
Sure, but if let's say that they get confirmed and they do a great job and they clean up these agencies, because listen, I'm not here to go off and spurg and criticize and totally talk about how all these agencies are totally evil and criticize the FBI, CIA, XYZ, right? But based on what's happened these past 12 years or 20 years, it's pretty clear that they've gone a little bit out of control, and they should kind of get reined in for everybody's benefit, also to restore public trust back. And if these people wind up doing a good job of restoring trust in these agencies by dismantling the waste and getting rid of a lot of the bad actors and making us healthy again, so we're not as dependent on the pharmaceutical industry, or we're not clamoring for an ultra KYC police state digital prison, I definitely see something like some of these disasters really rearing their head in the coming years to get us back on the track that they wanted us in when COVID was happening.
Those are all that's all political speculation about people that are going to be running the country. I'm more focused on, you asked me what I saw as what to be concerned about regarding that issue. For me, I know that there are bad actors in the world right now that are practicing delivering toxins through drone technology.
Yeah.
And they learned from COVID because they saw what COVID did to this country. And if they can start another contagion like that, they can do a lot more damage than picking off one government director of an agency at a time.
Right, but what happens is, yes, and I agree with you. But what happens in the United States also does kind of spread throughout the world. And if the United States is moving forward and moving past this in a way that we're going to have a much more free, open society in which the traditional American values are coming back, the people that go to Davos and that class of people, it's very obvious that they do not want that, right? And so if they discredit what's happening in the United States, then it prevents the other countries from following suit, and then, it winds up going back to what we were talking about.
Well, you're talking about concerns.
This is way in the future,
yeah.
And what I like to do is generally, I like to think like you're playing chess or checkers, like you just want to think like 3 or 4 moves ahead, and I could just see that being a possibility of something like this happening 2 years from now.
It's theoretical, and all of it's possible. There's a lot of moving parts there. People had concerns like this during the last 4 years, and now people need to be satisfied that they got the government they want. They voted in the government they wanted, and they've got to give that government an opportunity to address some of these concerns that have existed for years now, the things you're talking about. Those aren't new concerns.
No,
Davos
yeah.
and all of that. And now, I'm waiting to see how those concerns are going to be addressed by this new administration. My concerns are more based on my knowledge and my experience and on facts that I'm aware of, and how easy it would be to destabilize this country in other ways. And sitting in Mexico and flying a drone across the border, that does have a pathogen, and crashing it into a crowd of people, a football game at an open stadium, Reliant Stadium in Houston, being in a boat off of Galveston, fly a low-level drone over Reliant, and release Ebola into a stadium of 80,000 people. And then you have the contagion because it's Houston, which will spread immediately. And then the government has to shut down everything all over again. I'm not saying this government would do that, but that's what, if I put myself in the head of a bad guy, that's how I would do it. Cheaper, more efficient, more money for your buck. More results for your money, and that's how I see the drone issue playing out. On a personal level, I do know that I am approached all the time by people who have concerns about their personal security, their safety at home, and their businesses, especially ranchers, involving drones that they see over their properties all the time.
Well, so how do we stop that, though? Because what you're saying, these are like actual legitimate concerns that nobody is talking about.
Until they develop really accurate and efficient technology to monitor and be able to locate drones, and we're doing a much better job at it. Again, our technology is much more advanced than the Chinese and the Russians and the Europeans with regards to drones and the detection of drones. It's all about detecting them. We need to be able to detect them on our borders, all of our borders, not just our land borders, but our maritime borders. That's, I think, the best way to deal with that.
Sure.
And I know the government's aware of that, and I know they're doing research to make detection more effective. Certainly, the Department of Defense is working on it. At the same time, they're also working on technology to make drones more effective as a weapon. Now, there, you got to look at the Israelis and the Ukrainians who have done incredible things with drones. The Israelis can take a guy sitting on a stool at home with the sports section and blow him up in his bathroom from the sky and not take anybody else out. They've become very, very effective with their drone missile platforms.
No, and that's remarkable. But if that technology gets exported to like a tyrant or a group of tyrants who go to Davos, Bilderberg, etc., somebody like me or you could theoretically have that happen while we're taking a shit on the toilet,
Okay.
and that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I'm not worried about Davos. I'm worried about the resurgence of Al Qaeda and ISIS. Okay, because I come from an international perspective.
Sure.
I don't.
But they all get funding, right?
A lot of yes.
These
but
people all get they all get funded by
but
central
so much
banks
of
and big entities and all this other stuff.
so
too,
much of that money just goes right down the drain. It's just
Yeah.
wasted.
Like giving money to the Palestinians, it just goes to Hamas.
We've been yeah, right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, that's very true. That's the UN, which is
Yeah.
a whole other thing you and I can talk about, because I'm ready for the UN just to be booted right out of New
I
York.
don't think they should exist, right? Like I think we're on
No.
the same page with that, right? So,
It has become a haven for Jew haters. I don't really
It
like
is.
the word anti-Semite because Arabs are also Semitic.
yeah.
It's kind of a misnomer to use the term anti-Semite. So I just call them Jew haters.
There's a lot of that on X. But and we're going to talk about that. But
God, there's
it's
a lot
kind
of it on
insane.
X.
Like
The shit I've been sworn out on X before because I've been called an Israel lover constantly.
No, listen. How do you think I feel? I'm literally like, I've literally been like, not at the top of the list, but I've definitely been a known entity in, like, I guess, lack of a better word, the conspiracy theory community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people still really like my stuff, and I still have a lot of the same friends, and I'm very grateful for that. But there's a lot of people that were, like, big fans of my stuff, right, that never said anything bad about me. And all of a sudden, like, yo, I'm a proud Jew because, I'm a proud Jew, and I'm proud of my heritage, and I'm proud of who I am, and I'm getting closer to God and closer to my faith because I genuinely believe that helps you fight tyranny. And if it happens to be, like, with me getting closer to my Jewish faith and someone else is getting closer to their Christian faith, I think that's a good thing by and large. All of a sudden now people are saying I'm a subversive agent, I'm a subversive Jew, I'm with the New World Order. Like now I'm getting these conspiracy theories being flown about me.
Genocider,
Yeah,
genocider.
baby killer, all this bullshit, right? So
Yeah.
like I whatever you're feeling, I'm getting it worse, and I'm getting it some from friends of mine, or I was, where people were just nonstop spurring about the Jews, and I'm like, bro, I'm putting my health and safety and my financial well-being potentially and social standing on the line to do what you're too scared to actually do, and then you're like have the nerve to tell me that I'm subverting? Get the fuck out of here. Like, you guys are the ones who are subverting by like turning like legitimate reporters and legitimate journalists and legitimate like comedians exposing this New World Order bullshit and associating it with Jew hatred, which is what these actual globalists want to do. You're playing into their hands, literally.
Wow.
So
I haven't made the connection between the New World Order and and Hamas and Hezbollah, but I understand the point that you're making. The New World Order issue and concern was around a lot longer than October 7th of
the New World Order has been going on for decades.
Yeah,
Centuries.
and this is a bit of a, from my perspective, it's a different beast. This anti-Jewish element that's popped up everywhere, and now it's become chic to hate Israel and hate the Jews.
It also divides the truth movement, and it divides conservatives. And the next time a new virus drops, like you mentioned, through a drone or God knows what, or another terrorist attack occurs through a drone, guess what? You're a lot more likely to implement tyranny when the people on the side of freedom are fighting against each other over the Jews.
Yeah.
So that's my view on it.
And well, I have a reputation which I earned during my career of being very pro-Israel. It hurt me at times in my career because you're not supposed to be, you're supposed to just do your job. But that's how I began to see that issue very, very And I just am. I'm not I'm unapologetic about it from the start. Very pro-Israel.
Sure. And so am I. I'm very adamant about it. And I'm not, didn't mean to interrupt. And I also just want to like clarify. Like, I don't think like we should be sending like American taxpayer dollars to Israel in the amount that we're sending it. But I also don't think we should be sending money to. I don't think American tax dollars should be going to foreign countries in general in the way in which they're going. And you could still support Israel. Verbally, you could support Israel financially without making it so that like a truck driver in Pennsylvania that's being decimated by inflation, you could make it so that their taxes don't have to go to that either, and it's not like one doesn't preclude the other.
Well,
and I want to think that's my view on that, you know.
And we can talk about money going overseas and Ukraine, but I want to
total diversion.
I want to yes, I want
to say that while we're on this podcast.
Let's jump into the New Orleans.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got sidetracked on that.
I still do contract work. I'm still working, and I have interaction with the FBI, DHS, Border Patrol, local law enforcement, and I have a bias. I admit my bias up front, and people need to understand that when they listen to me give my perspective. I try and separate my opinions from things that I think are fact-based. The issue in New Orleans, I heard someone on a podcast yesterday saying that the FBI is complicit in the deaths of those people because they didn't put up barriers on Bourbon Street. And that shows absolute ignorance.
But why wouldn't they don't they put up barriers on that all the time though?
The FBI?
Well, no, not the FBI, but like doesn't the New Orleans police and like
it's a New Orleans police issue. It's an Orleans parish issue.
Sure, but they didn't do that.
No, they didn't. But what I was seeing was the FBI is complicit because they didn't put up barriers,
which is ridiculous. But here's the question, and the question is, and there's no proof of this, but I think the big reason why somebody might be saying that is they might speculate that maybe the chief of New Orleans PD got a call from somebody higher up telling them not to put up a barrier. Like,
see, this is getting ridiculous, though.
But I'm just
Alex,
telling you, like,
come
why
on.
that would happen. I'm telling you why somebody would say that, right?
People are really, they're spending way too much time overthinking these things. And at the end of the day, it was a failure on the part of local law enforcement to do their job. And then it was extrapolated by what I see is a terrible and totally unqualified special agent in charge of the FBI in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, the DEI hire?
Yes. Yeah. And she made such a mess of things, and it's situations like that that unfortunately taint all the FBI field offices and the rank and file special agents that are out every day chasing down serial killers, chasing down human traffickers, chasing down white-collar crime. And it's unfortunate that that is the case. The issue of the FBI is about a need for reform, not a need for burning down the house. And it starts with the DEI. But to hear that comment that the FBI was, and this was from a popular podcaster with a lot of subscribers. It's not important.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you offline.
Sure, yeah.
But to say that the FBI is complicit, not just in the mistakes, but in the death of those people. And now it takes us to another issue that I think you and I might spar just a little bit on.
Sure.
Okay. It kind of folds into the issue of the Patriot Act. Okay, we have all these people that are obsessed with this idea that the U.S. government, federal law enforcement, and the intelligence community are spying on American citizens.
Well, I thought that was kind of proven, wasn't it?
Well, regardless, the question of spying is a bit of an extrapolation to use that term, but that's the concern that they have. Now, both of these individuals, Las Vegas and New Orleans, were U.S. citizens, okay? How is federal law enforcement supposed to monitor the activities of these people if they don't have the tools that the Patriot Act gave them? So you don't want the Patriot Act. You don't want the federal government to be able to monitor people's subversive commentaries and activities online. But yet, when something like this happens, you say, why didn't they know? Why weren't they aware?
I think that this could also be used to point out that maybe the Patriot Act and these types of measures don't work very well also, and that could also be another counterpoint.
Well, the Patriot Act hasn't really been used in years because of the sensitivities. Federal law enforcement has been very, very sensitive and careful about the use of the Patriot Act.
Which is a good thing, I think.
I don't have a problem with it either.
That shouldn't be
the fact that
overused,
this happened, these things are going to happen. But to come back and say, why didn't they know? Why didn't they do more? It's their fault. They should have known all about these two guys, who, by the way, were decorated military, one of them active duty.
Well, didn't they also... Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. Come on, keep on.
And why didn't they know? Well, you don't want them to know. Make up your mind, okay? It's very hypocritical to say, don't monitor, but yet when you don't monitor, then you say, well, why didn't you know?
So then it's a great way to manufacture consent for utilizing all the resources of the Patriot Act.
At the end of the day, these things are just going to happen. I don't want the U.S. government monitoring what I do. I don't want them to know where I go on my iPad. I don't want them to know
but
those
they already
things.
do know.
Well, I mean,
just for
the U.S. government doesn't know like Apple knows, okay?
That's what I'm saying. Okay, yes, Apple knows, and Apple gives that information to, they like, if they wanted to, or if they got subpoenaed, they would have to give all that information to the U.S. government.
If they got subpoenaed. Yeah. Have you ever looked at the process to get that kind of subpoena?
No.
It is not an easy thing to do. It is not an easy process. And the fact that it has been abused politically against Trump and against, in other instances, other people, that again is just a product of our broken political system. And we have to be very careful that we don't use those same tools now to go against the other side.
I agree with you.
And I'm seeing indications that might happen, because now I'm seeing a bit of a hesitation to want to address those issues, because now we've got the controls. Now we can use those tools. But
I don't think they're going to really weaponize the government that much, though.
Well,
I think that like what you're going to do is you're going to just get better investigations into like the origins of COVID, or
if you don't,
the 2020 election. And there were some very, very bad actors that did a lot of very bad things in these past 5 years, and those, like, you should investigate those specific bad actors. The problem is, like, the person who helped organize the BLM protest should not be like going down with some of those awful actors too. You know?
No, I agree. But when the first candidate for any cabinet post that's announced, that the incoming administration announces, is Matt Gaetz, and you're not sending a message that you're trying to politicize the Justice Department for Attorney General, the head law enforcement officer of this country, with sitting investigations in the Ethics Committee and a dropped investigation from the Justice Department for all kinds of stuff, not just a 17-year-old, but all kinds of stuff, taking bribes. Did no one do their homework on this guy? He is... I see no context with regards to Matt Gaetz. What a mistake. And I like about 90% of Trump's choices.
I like a lot of them. I like his Bitcoin stance. I like what he's doing with the public health agencies. I'm actually because I remember when he went last time, I was all about DeSantis and very critical of Trump and concerned. A lot of these concerns have kind of been assuaged in many ways.
Well, you and I were both on board with DeSantis.
Yeah.
I still like DeSantis. I would like DeSantis in 2028,
so would I like
not
him
J.D.
a lot.
Vance.
Yeah,
I like J.D. Vance, but I'm a DeSantis guy, because the proof is in the pudding. You got to look at what somebody's done. And I am really impressed with DeSantis. But
as it stands right now, yes, but a lot could change in 4 years.
Sure, that's absolutely true. But about Trump's appointments, a couple of his appointments are to reward people because they were loyal. And I know that loyalty is an obsession with his, and it's an understandable obsession because of his last administration. But the priority for the choices that you make have to be the best interests of the American people, and loyalty to you has to come second.
Yes. I also think that Tulsi and Kennedy kind of goes against that narrative because Tulsi and Kennedy were some of Trump's biggest critics, and they've shown that they can competently criticize Donald Trump and help move his agenda forward in a way that benefits the American people. And so that, like, the fact that you're appointing Tulsi and RFK into prominent positions after they were some of your loudest critics, it shows that if you criticize Trump effectively, that will also get rewarded, which is, I think, a very positive thing.
I think I am not anti-RFK with Health and Human Services.
Okay.
I'm not because he understands that issue. Now, there are two appointments. There are three that really bother me. Kristi Noem as head of Homeland Security. Homeland Security includes ATF, it includes DHS, Border Patrol, ICE, it includes DEA. She has zero law enforcement experience, zero. She comes from a state that has fewer people in it than Travis County. It has no border, and she is going to be running our border enforcement. No experience whatsoever,
Yeah,
unqualified. Okay, but she was rewarded. I don't care that much that she took her dog out in the yard and shot it. That bothers me on a personal level. I wouldn't want to have lunch with her, although she is attractive.
She's very attractive.
Yes, but then you move on to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard does not have the intelligence background to be the director of national intelligence. I think she's smart. I think she's going to learn quick. I'm not as bothered by that one. Kash Patel, I am horrified by.
No, I love this. I think Kash Patel's great.
I think
that he did a really good job of uncovering a lot about how Trump was being spied on from within, and I think there's a lot of mess and a lot of bullshit within these agencies, and I think that you need somebody new to kind of shake this up, and I want to give this guy a chance. And I also think that these past 5 years, there's been a lot of faith lost in these alphabet agencies like the CIA and FBI, and me having known you, I like you a lot, and I also think that, you know, having someone like that to clean these agencies up could actually help restore faith in the alphabet agencies, which is desperately needed to preserve our country.
Whatever happens, half of this country is not going to be happy. Okay? The other half of the country, after 4 years with Trump, is going to say, well, now these agencies are doing his bidding. We're never going to get past this because we are so split in this country.
We are less split than people think. When I work on 6th Street and give pedicab rides, I have a rap song about Donald Trump, a rap song about Joe Biden. I play it for all of my customers pretty much, and it's met very positively. I was doing street interviews asking ghetto black people how they feel about the economy, and they were voluntarily talking about how they want Donald Trump to go back into office. So I think that a lot of the division is kind of manufactured, and it's being overly politicized by the media. And when you talk to people normally on the street, most people are actually more in agreement on things than I think ever before.
Well, we'll just have to disagree on that.
We'll agree to disagree, but I think that the division and the disagreement is not as bad as people think it is.
When you look at Philadelphia and California and New York and Chicago, these urban centers that have multi-millions of people, and they vote so solidly Democrat, and if you pay attention to all the media and not just conservative media, you see that there is, in my opinion, a real split in this country like I've never seen.
Yeah, if you
and
think our elections are
I have friends in Washington, D.C. I mean, I was up there in November.
I'm going to go up there for the inauguration, and then I'll make videos and we'll see. But I also...
Oh, well, you're going to be in Washington when it's going to be full of MAGA.
No, there's also going to be protests, and there's also going to be... And that's not true. I'm getting there on the 16th before a lot of those people come, so I'll be able to do some...
Well, I know you're going to find what you're looking for. There's no doubt.
The progressives.
There's no doubt. I'm talking about the people that live there in D.C., and these are friends of mine that I've had for 30 and 40 years, and they are so far left, and they are intelligent, hardworking people, other than the fact that I disagree with them completely about politics. But about Kash Patel, I don't mean to go back to his statement about burning down the FBI field office.
Making the museum of the deep state?
That is such bullshit conspiracy crap, and he is going to be running the FBI. He is going to go after people who do not agree with him politically and do not agree with
I
Trump
think we also have
politically.
checks and balances where a lot of that. I
Oh,
think that's getting.
yeah,
I
those
think
checks and balances really worked real well over the last 4 years, didn't they? Not at all.
All right.
And now, this is what I'm
These
talking
people
about.
Are so bad about abusing power and all these other things that you do have an obligation to make it to
No.
actually investigate who they are and make it so that this never happens
It was a choice made because of absolute loyalty to Donald Trump. Just like Kristi Noem, two people that were unqualified for the position who give the appearance of being willing to make decisions that are going to benefit people politically. And he could have chosen. There are many special agent in charges, people inside the Justice Department who are conservative, who are unhappy, who are lifelong federal agents, who have the experience, who understand the paperwork, who understand. He has no idea what it means to be a field agent on the street in Minot, North Dakota, chasing a serial killer. He has no clue. He doesn't understand subpoena issues. He doesn't understand what a special agent has to do to process an investigation. What he does understand is politics. And that's why I am not happy. And with Kristi Noem, the Border Patrol unions love Donald Trump. The supervisors, all of the port of entry directors. He couldn't have found someone there who understands what it means to be a Border Patrol officer working in the bush to run that organization. Instead, he chose a woman. I mean, a woman doesn't matter. A governor from a state that is smaller than Travis County.
No, I agree with you on Kristi Noem that what you're saying makes sense. I know a lot of people. I have a friend named Joey Limisaros who was getting sued by Joe Biden's Justice Department for driving a truck with a Trump flag on it, trailing the Biden bus, doing nothing wrong. She beat the case, but she had really nice things to say about Kash Patel kind of stepping away from how the justice system was being weaponized. Owen Shore is a friend of mine who was in jail for January 6th. I know a few people that were like J6ers and stuff as a result of what I've been doing. Almost everybody I know who's been prosecuted by Biden's justice system wrongfully has nothing but good things to say about Kash Patel. And so just as a result of that and that alone, I am cautiously optimistic about somebody like that shaking up these agencies in a way that I think could help over the long term.
You've made my point. Your examples made my point. There's nothing in there about someone from the other side of the political spectrum. The FBI has to be balanced and unbiased. Okay? Kash Patel is not. He comes into this with an agenda. And that
what do you think his agenda is, though?
Well, the agenda is MAGA.
Okay, what is the MAGA agenda? Secure borders?
No, MAGA agenda is loyalty to Donald Trump.
No,
you think if Kash Patel comes across a legitimate investigation into the Trump family, he's not going to smother it? He's going to pursue it? Bull. Be realistic.
Everybody does that when
okay,
guy,
so then it was okay for the Bidens.
No,
if everybody does it, everybody does it.
Do you think that the Biden family should be investigated for their corruption? Do you think we should investigate how the 2020 election was managed? And I wasn't a big voter fraud.
2020 needs to go away. Okay. Yes, on the Bidens.
No, all right, sure. But here's my views on this. Right, I've been on so many right-wing podcasts and shows where people talk about voter fraud, and I'm just like, dude, stop. Like, you can't prove fraud. Like, there's no there has to be a margin of fraud. It wasn't there. Like, I'm in your camp. However, from watching a lot of the videos and watching a lot of the reporting from people like Scott Pressler on X, you saw that there were a lot of voting irregularities that did take place in places like Pennsylvania, and they were winning court injunctions to extend voting and all these other things. Mm-hmm. And there is a real possibility that you had similar issues that could have potentially taken place in 2020 that didn't go reported or got dismissed because of how the social media landscape had been operating.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. So, and then you look at even Austin. Austin's not as woke as people think it is whenever you talk to people, but it's run in a way that's like wokeness on steroids. And so
I look at election results, my friend. That's what I look at.
Okay, and then maybe we should just investigate to see where there are election integrity issues in other states. Even the governor election of Kari Lake in Arizona was sketchy as fuck in 2022.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I do. Out of everybody to run like an alphabet agency, I do trust Kash Patel more to like uncover those issues than anybody else, and those are big issues,
But
and that should
is
get
that-
looked at.
I don't think 2020 needs to be a priority anymore. Trump is back in office.
Fine, 2020 doesn't,
Okay,
but
now
some of the election issues in some of those states should be uncovered and federally investigated.
I agree.
That's
I
what I'm
agree.
saying.
If it were up to me, we would
That's-
have day voting, election day voting only,
Yes.
except in extreme cases, and ID.
Yeah.
Okay. That,
Paper
look,
ballots, yes,
I
yes,
agree
yes.
on all of that, and we absolutely, and especially at the local level,
that's what I'm
precinct
saying, yeah.
level, we've got to do work to tighten up the whole electoral process. But going back to the particulars of 2020, I'm really, it's time for us to. I think it's time for us to move past that.
Even like the blatant censorship regime that's going to go completely unaccounted for, like that shit should get prosecuted. Like what the way in which like the Biden administration and some bad actors within these communities went about to censor bad info on Trump, censor accurate info
Oh God,
on the
we're
virus.
back.
Like,
We're back to the Trump thing.
I'm just
Listen,
that's one example.
listen,
I don't care. Then forget
move
forget
forward,
Trump.
Alex.
I am moving forward. But in order to move forward, you have to hold these agencies accountable so that you actually can move forward, so that they don't do the same thing again moving forward.
The best way.
I think that's like
the
that's like a
best
reasonable
way
thing to say, right?
to hold them accountable is to choose people, as Trump did with Radcliffe at the CIA, who are non-overtly political, whose lives have been dedicated to the mission of their organization. Not, we went from left political appointees to right political appointees. And that is really makes me very uncomfortable.
Okay, I think that your concerns, I respect your concerns. I don't think that they're going to materialize in the way that you're worried.
I would love it if I was wrong.
Yeah.
Now,
I genuinely, like I talked to
look,
Shank.
this is the
I
Detroit
talked to
Lions.
Shank.
Go Lions!
I talked to Shank from the Young Turks actually, right before the election, and I was telling him, I'm like, dude, Trump is not like the right thinks he's a savior and the left thinks he's a dictator, and these next 4 years you're going to realize that he was wrong on both aspects, and he's like, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
So,
now,
this is the same gist of the conversation is what I'm trying to say.
I something that you might find entertaining. It's not going to surprise you that I get called a rhino all the time.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, not at all.
And it has gotten to be a real trigger issue for me because it's so offensive from groups of people that talk about it's wrong to label Trump as a fascist and a dictator, but yet they're going to call me a rhino. They'll throw out names just as easily. It's politics, and I'm very offended by it because I think that I try and have a balanced perspective. I call things out as I see them. When I give certain opinions, I recognize when I have what someone would describe as a rhino. I'm a Bush guy. I am a Bush guy. I am a product of the Bush administrations.
Sure.
And I don't run away from that.
No, and you and like 8% of the population have a lot in common.
Well, 400,000
Yeah.
people voted for Nikki Haley in Texas.
Which is fucking crazy. But how many of them were probably Democrats?
Well,
anyway?
I voted for Nikki Haley.
Well, that's fine.
I voted for Trump in the presidential election.
So did I. I voted for no, I didn't vote in the primary actually because I was going to vote for Kennedy. And then he just
I remember
Trump,
that.
And then
And
yeah.
I'm still not happy with you about that.
Why?
Because you got me to start liking Kennedy.
Kennedy's awesome and he's right. Because Kennedy's a man.
And then when I talked to you again, you were a little bit more circumspect about Kennedy, and I'm like, Alex got me to like Kennedy, and now he's more circumspect than I am about Kennedy. But anyways, I'm kind of just teasing you there.
No, I know. Hey, but we got distracted. So here, like, let's circle back to the terrorists. Do you not think it's like kind of weird that the New Orleans terrorist and the Cybertruck bomber rented that, like, were at the same military base in Fort Bragg and rented their car from Turo on the exact same day?
They may have rented their vehicle from Toro at the same day, but that's the kind of coincidences that do happen. They were not at Bragg at the same time. They did not know each other. They did not associate with each other. And
that guy Ryan Ruth was also a repeated, like, was also at Fort
God.
Bragg too.
Yeah, but my father was at Fort Bragg. I was born at Fort Bragg.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, and it's, it's not for brag
No, I don't think they were like in cahoots with each other, right?
know.
Like I'm not saying that, but if a place like Fort Bragg is continuously being tied to those three incidences, it's not unreasonable to be concerned about, like, well, what are they teaching these people at Fort Bragg? Like, what is being, like, how are they training these people at that particular base?
Well, how they're training people at that particular base. Do you know how many hundreds of thousands of soldiers go through those bases every few years? Look, one issue was about mental illness, which we need to address in this country. The other issue was about Islamic extremism having taken root in the United States amongst U.S. citizens. That is another issue that we have to address.
Yeah, also,
getting lost in these other directions is only a distraction. Let's focus on those real issues, especially about Islamic extremism and how it has taken root in our universities, and not just in our universities, but in our communities. There are people that we brought back from Iraq and Afghanistan, real heroes, linguists, who worked for us and put their lives on the line when we were at war to help our military. And they come back and they have children. They come over on a particular visa, and they're allowed to stay, and their children are born here, they're U.S. citizens, and they become radicalized. That's a real issue that is, I don't see anybody addressing it. I'm hoping the new administration does, because that, I think, is a real concern. That's what happened in New Orleans.
Oh, and another weird thing, too, is that lady from the New York Post comes in there, yoga pants, winter jacket, into that guy's house 2 days after terrorist attacks occurred. Meanwhile, like, that guy Aubrey Hale, the tranny who shot a bunch of people in Tennessee, like, we still don't know what's in the Tranifesto, but, like, that guy's house automatically just gets shown to the New York Post, and a specific page in the Koran about jihadism and all types of crazy shit just happens to be open at that exact time while they're going to his house. Like, that I mean, stuff like that does cause people to lose faith in some of these agencies. It just smells like very op-like.
I don't think that anybody who is going to lose faith in an agency over that hasn't already lost faith.
Yes, but it enhances that, and it solidifies why people have already lost faith. And that does look like, to the average layperson, that looks suspicious as fuck, Eric.
Well, there are,
But no, and like, I'm not interrogating you. I'm just like, I'm just speaking for like what the average person probably feels, and you're the expert. I just want maybe like clarify like some of those concerns.
I have to deal with conspiracy theories all the time, and what I try and explain to people, and you and I have talked about this before as well.
Yeah.
The government, more so in the past than now, I think, loves a good conspiracy theory because it distracts people away from the less sexy thing that is really going on.
What's the less sexy thing that's going on, Eric?
Well, who knows? Because people are more focused on whether or not this lady's dog had a surveillance detection stuck up his butt, filming somebody walking down the street who might have been the cousin of a plumber of the guy from New Orleans.
Yes, and then meanwhile Bill Gates drops a bioweapon through a drone at Energy Stadium during the Cotton Bowl or whatever. So yes, I understand what you're saying.
I didn't say Bill Gates.
I know. I had to say. I threw that out there because I knew it would. It would add to the conversation.
Yes. Well, what I was talking about with regards to the drones is actually happening. It's happening in Africa. People are testing drones to deliver viruses. That's my concern about that, and how easy it would be to do in this country until they get better security regarding drones. But enough of all of that stuff. I have to deal, people think that because I'm still connected to the organization that I do speaking engagements, I come on really awesome programs like yours.
Oh, yes.
And they think, well, he's just a mouthpiece for the message that the government wants to put out. And you know what? I understand that suspicion.
Yeah.
I really do.
I
accept
not worried
it.
about that
And there are
with you.
people that are going to be watching this that are going to make that assumption.
Absolutely.
And I accept it. I own it. It's because that is my life. That is what I did my whole life. I do try and tell people, look, let's focus on now and the future and what the concerns are about the future. And, you asked me, I told you what I'm concerned about: Islamic extremism in our communities and amongst young people, viruses. I think that the next real threat to the national security of this country is going to come from biological warfare, certainly not from an invasion from Mexico or Canada, or China for that matter. We also, you'll agree with me on this, and it takes us into the issue of the visas. We have to tighten up the freedom we give to Chinese nationals in particular and Russian nationals in this country, because they are subversive and they work against the security of the people that live here. And they are allowed into this country. We have Chinese spies in our labs. We have them in our political system. We have them in our businesses. They're everywhere. They're insidious. They are in academia like you wouldn't believe. It's a rot that I don't know how they're going to get out. We have children of members of the Chinese Communist Party of the Politburo going to UT right now on scholarship, working on classified Department of Defense contracts. That is another concern of mine. What do you think about that?
No, I agree with you. These are valid concerns. I think that when it comes to people accusing, like people being suspicious of alphabet agency employees and repeating the government talking points and subverting and all this other stuff, I'm actually more concerned about the people who have those connections that are overly enthusiastically spouting the freedom talking points more than I am someone like you that just tries to be matter of fact and direct about stuff.
I appreciate that.
If that makes sense, right? The people like the Myron Gaineses, who former DHS officer that is literally spending all of his time spurging about the Jews online and praising Adolf Hitler and doing all that stuff. That feels like way more of an op than a guy who worked for the CIA that happens to like George Bush and is open to admitting that. Because when you look at his popularity, nobody would voluntarily openly admit to liking George Bush, right? So that actually does make me trust you more because you're admitting to something that absurd.
Oh my goodness. Well, it is what it is. Now, about the visas. Can we talk about the visas?
We got 5 more minutes, so we got it. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. Oops.
Let me get my dew water real quick.
Okay. I was going to say, you're going to edit this out, right? How much time do we have left?
Less than 3 minutes. We're heading back. Less than 5.
Oh boy, then I got to hurry with the visas.
We can take a little time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to try and run through this visa stuff
Visa stuff.
really
It's
quick.
not a big. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm interested.
I'm interested. I wanna talk
want
about
to educate it just a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. Difference between immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas. Immigrant visas are resident aliens that are able to come into this country and stay without any time limitations, and they can adjust to citizenship. They're usually relatives of people that are already here. Non-immigrant visas are timed visas that are meant for people who have the intention of returning to their home country. The H-1B visa that was in the news recently, that's a specialty visa for people that has really recently become more focused on the tech industry. $65,000 a year are allowed, plus $20,000 for a different category that fits into H-1B. It comes out to about $100,000 a year. Right now, there are roughly 700,000 people on H-1B visas in this country. The whole idea that Elon Musk was speaking in favor of H-1B visas, I don't have an opinion on that one way or another. I really don't, because I see benefit of it. But I'm also all about tightening immigration. I totally support Trump's plans for mass deportation.
Yeah, we got to do that first. I think we got to do that first before we do anything about H-1Bs.
I agree. I think that there is a conflict of interest when Musk, before the government has even started to function, the new administration comes out and steps outside of his lane, so to speak, outside of Doge, and starts talking about an immigration policy that directly benefits his company, because he's got tens of thousands of people on H-1B visas working for his company, and he wants more. So I think that there's it doesn't have a good look, so to speak. I don't want him to start off with a controversy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think that there's a balance between hiring the best and the brightest people in technology and in AI and in everything else to continually preserve American excellence, with completely replacing mid-level American tech workers, which it seems when you look at like the payroll reports, a lot of these H-1B visa jobs are just like mid-level 40,000, 50, 60,000 a year tech jobs. Like, that should not be okay. Or like whenever I call Chase for a banking issue, or call like the server for my website, I shouldn't be talking to somebody from India. Like my phone call should not be routed to the guy who barely speaks English when I try to speak to somebody about a concern I have. Or if you're driving for Uber and Lyft, and Pergy, he's the driver, right? He can answer this too. Like, you got a whole bunch of illegal aliens that are just driving for Uber and Lyft, totally unvetted. Like, that needs to get addressed before we start like adding more H-1Bs. But
I agree.
I like Indians, and I think like some Indian people are some of the most intelligent people in the world. Like, where I went to college, there was a lot of Indians that I went to school with that were super smart, super cool people, and the hatred that people are like spewing out towards the Indian population is comical and absurd. And there's a balance.
But there's an issue having to deal with third world countries like India, and I do consider it a third world country, and Pakistan.
Yeah.
When you have that magnet for their best and their brightest, it does not help our issue with mass illegal immigration and our border, because those countries stay destabilized and stay poverty-ridden because the best and the brightest are coming here.
And then all of a sudden, now you're going to then eventually you get a new administration, and then they'll just open the floodgates up for these impoverished, like, primitive, like, I hate to say this, right, but like backwards, primitive people flooding the country.
Uneducated, yes.
I shouldn't say the word primitive. But
uneducated, lack of experience, and bad actors in every bunch.
Yeah.
I do want to point out one thing about the H-1B visa. There are rules in place that require any sponsor for an H-1B visa to show that they will not hire someone at under the rate that is acceptable in this country. That is the law. So this idea that they're hiring a lot of people at a lower rate than what they would have to hire Americans, the government tries to monitor that. I'm sure it's abused. But when you read H-1B visa, that is the second bullet point down, that there is a requirement for all sponsors to prove that they're going to hire new people at the same entry rate as they would hire a U.S. citizen.
Yes, but the American is going to be more apt to want to negotiate a higher starting rate.
Absolutely.
The Indian is
living allowance,
the
car
Indian
allowance.
will take the minimum and be fine with it, and so it does still cut costs.
You're absolutely right on that.
But I also think too that people are like saying that Musk is like deboosting accounts and all this other stuff because they're critical of the H-1B, and then I look at the fact that these guys are just ratioing the fuck out of everybody, and they get millions of impressions per post, and I'm just like, the math doesn't add up. Like, that's total bullshit. And if you're getting your check mark, that comes with having a centralized platform, and you shouldn't advocate for censorship or limiting people's visibility, no matter how awful the views are. Like, I still believe that. But what was I going to say about this? We need to be honest here, and that you're not getting deboosted for opposing H-1B visas. You're getting like the stuff's getting deboosted because you're like openly engagement farming and openly like just praising Adolf Hitler and doing things to just create like insane amounts of chaos or distract from like everything that people work their asses off to try to like achieve so that we could get our country back. And so I do understand like that perspective. I don't think like you should be deboosting or deplatforming or doing any of this stuff where like if you paid 10 grand for a gold check on X, like you shouldn't lose that service if you're not going to get your money back or whatever it is, or even lose that service at all. But I just think that like the fact people are saying like, oh, like they're taking these perks away because I'm critical of H1B. I'm like, no, dude, they're taking that away because you're just like an anti-Semitic, Jew-hating, schizophrenic psychopath.
Right.
And that's what it is, and we should just be honest about why it's being taken away, and then the conversation should pivot towards, well, you still have free speech and they shouldn't take it away from you, but it's not because you're opposing immigration, it's because you're just a Jew-hating schizophrenic psychopath.
Yeah.
You should still have the same free speech as everybody else, but it's not because you oppose H1B, it's because of that.
I agree.
That's, you know.
I agree. And I'm very happy with Elon Musk. I like him. I think his motivations are in the right place. I like the fact that he's speaking out about things in England.
Yeah, I do too.
I have to say I see Ramaswamy as a bit of a high-end grifter, but
I like him.
that's just my opinion. He makes me uncomfortable, but I do like Musk, and I think Doge is going to do great things.
I agree.
I'm really hoping that we can finally tackle the debt.
Yeah, and I like the strategic Bitcoin reserve is also very good too.
Mm-hmm.
All really good stuff. Okay, Eric, how do we get a hold of you?
You know how to get a hold of me.
Well, it's about the audience.
There's my what do you want me to do? Give them my email address or?
I don't know, man. Like if you wrote a book, you've done stuff. Like just tell
Okay.
people where to find like your information so they can learn more about
Okay,
you.
well, I wrote a book that's called Mukhabarat Baby, which is Arabic for CIA, and it's spelled Mukhabarat. I have a company in which I do risk assessment for overseas people interested in mining and special metals, particular metals, and that's the Furnace Group, Fournace. And if you want to try and reach out to me any other way, you can always just send an email to Alex.
Funny. All right, Eric, thanks for coming on, man. This was a pleasure.
Thanks.
All right.
Much obliged.
Excited. Boom.